All right, let's dive into something pretty wild. We're going to talk about a connection you probably never thought about, the one between the sounds you hear every day and the memories you hold on to. It turns out your brain isn't just a microphone passively recording the world. Nope, it's more like a sound engineer actively editing the soundtrack of your life. And the coolest part? We're going to show you how you can use that same idea to, well, literally turn up the volume on your own memory.
Okay, first up, let's start with a trick of the ears, and I'm willing to bet this is something you've actually experienced yourself. It's the perfect way to get a handle on just how much our brains are messing with us, in a good way, of course.
So picture this. Have you ever been watching a foreign film? You've got the subtitles on, but for some reason, you feel like you need to crank up the volume. It sounds kind of quiet, right? You're reaching for the remote, thinking the sound mixing is just totally off. But what if I told you the problem isn't your TV or your speakers?
Yep, that's right. It's not a hearing problem. It's actually a brain feature. That feeling is totally real, and it has a solid basis in how our brains work. It's not a bug, it's a built-in feature of your operating system. And this little quirk leads us to some absolutely incredible research.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Why do words we already know literally sound louder to us? Let's unpack the science. So, a 2025 study in the Journal of Cognition decided to tackle this head-on. The researchers were basically asking, does our brain give a volume boost to words it recognizes? To figure this out, they came up with a really simple but honestly pretty brilliant experiment.
Here's what they did. They took a real word, like example, and then they just scrambled the syllables to make a totally meaningless word, like amplex. See, same sounds, just in a different order. Then, they had people listen to pairs of these words, one real, one nonsense, and asked a super simple question. Which one sounds louder?
And get this, the results were absolutely crystal clear. Even when the real word and the nonsense word were played at the exact same decibel level, people consistently said the real word sounded louder. I mean, look at this chart. The brain was literally turning up its own internal volume knob for anything it recognized.
And this wasn't just a small effect either. It was huge. In one experiment with French speakers, when people made a mistake about which sound was louder, over 70% of the time, that mistake was in favor of the real French word. So our bias towards what's familiar is incredibly strong.
So what's going on here? Well, scientists call this a top-down process. Think of it like this. Your brain's top level, all your knowledge, your vocabulary, is reaching down and literally changing what your ears are perceiving on a basic level. Your knowledge is shaping your reality. And why does it do this? It's all about being efficient. The brain uses what it knows as a shortcut so it can focus its energy on new, unfamiliar stuff. It's not a passive microphone. It's that active sound engineer, constantly tweaking the levels for you.
Okay, so that's how our brain edits sound. Now, let's take this amazing idea and see how we can apply it to something else, our memory. Because if our brain can turn up the volume on words, well, that begs a really powerful question, doesn't it?
If knowing something makes it sound louder, can we use that same trick to make new memories feel louder? Can we basically hijack this brain feature to make the things we want to remember more powerful, more prominent, and way easier to recall?
Well, the answer seems to be a big yes. And one of the most powerful tools we have to do this is something we're all familiar with, music. This is where we get into the music mnemonic. So, really quick, what's a mnemonic device? It's basically any little trick that helps you remember stuff. Like rhymes or acronyms you learned in school. Well, it turns out music isn't just a mnemonic device, it's like a superpowered one.
Yeah, tons of research shows that music is an incredibly powerful tool for memory. It uses rhythm, melody, and emotion to lock information into our brains. And this is especially helpful for people with learning differences, like dyslexia, who might have a harder time with things like sounds and sequences.
So, how does this actually work? Well, you can kind of break it down into 3 steps. First, the rhythm and melody in music create a predictable structure. Think of it like a scaffold you can hang new information on. Second, it lights up a whole bunch of different parts of your brain at once, the hearing parts, the emotional parts, the attention parts. This creates a much richer memory. And finally, all that strengthens your ability to recall the info. It gives you multiple ways to find it later. If you forget the words, hey, you might still remember the tune.
And you can see here just how powerful this is, especially when it comes to learning challenges. Music helps with phonological awareness through something called amplified encoding. Hey, sound familiar? It's that loudness effect all over again, but for learning. It boosts your working memory, making it easier to pull information out. And because it gets your emotions involved, the memories are just deeper. It literally builds new pathways in the brain, making that memory louder and a heck of a lot harder to forget.
Okay, so let's pull all of this together. We've talked about this weird loudness illusion, and we've talked about the power of music for memory. So what's the big picture?
Well, the main thing to remember is this. Your brain isn't just a camera passively recording reality. It's an active editor. It's constantly interpreting, boosting, and organizing information based on what it already thinks is important. It's shaping your world.
Just like Boris New, the guy who led the loudness study, said, quote, "What we know and recognize shapes how we hear them. Plain and simple. The stuff you're familiar with gets an automatic boost."
And this is the really cool part, where it all clicks together. The loudness illusion shows how familiarity makes an external thing, a sound, seem louder. And music mnemonics show how we can use a familiar structure to make an internal thing, a memory, feel louder. See the parallel? It's the same principle, just applied in two different ways.
It's a really powerful idea, right? That we can actually team up with our brain's natural tendency to edit reality using tools like music to our advantage. And that leaves me with one last question for you to chew on. If your brain is constantly tweaking the volume of what you hear, what else is it editing?